Good morning, everyone. I am Leah Sutton with Best NC. I am happy to welcome you today. We have just a few minutes, an hour carved out today to talk about the upcoming Advanced Teaching Roles Opportunity, grant opportunity, which is coming up in September. So we're thankful that you're here and happy that you're interested in this work. And we look forward to talking about that opportunity, as well as having some time for you to ask questions of folks who are already doing this work. So looking at today's agenda, I'm going to give a super quick overview of advanced teaching roles, where we are in the state with this initiative, which has been going on since 2016. And we have Dr. Kim Evans from DPI, who's going to share a little bit about the RFP opportunity, which will be coming out of the department shortly. And then we have time at the end, a lot of time for question and answer. So what are your questions for people who are either for DPI or for people who are doing this work already? So with us, we have Dr. Heath Belcher from Lincoln County Schools. Lincoln County is a recent grantee, so they just wrote a successful proposal in this grant program, and so they can share some of their insights as they get started with advanced teaching roles. And then we have Kelly McKinnon from Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, and Charlotte has actually been doing advanced teaching roles since before the state program began in 2016. And so Kelly can share a lot about their work and, the progress and sort of learning that they've done over the years. So with that, I will give you just a very quick overview of advanced teaching roles. If you're still learning about what this initiative is, the premise of advanced teaching roles really is that the outdated organizational structure in schools, this flat organizational structure, really doesn't leverage the talents of the people in our building. And it's just really it doesn't work well for educators or for students. And so, in North Carolina, principals have on average 50 direct reports. And in some districts, larger schools, it's many more than that. And so it's challenging to give teachers sort of the individual support that they really need when the principal is stretched really thin, and then teachers work, oftentimes sort of in a silo in their own classroom and don't have as much exposure to their peers, learning from their peers as they would like to have. So, this flat organizational structure limits teachers. Teachers, if our best teachers, our experienced, effective teachers, do not have opportunities to advance while staying in the classroom. And we hear from teachers often that they want to advance, they're ambitious, and they want to advance in their career, make more money, but they want to stay close to kids, and they don't necessarily want to pursue an administrative track. So that challenge is sort of a result, results from the fact that we have this flat organizational structure, and there's nowhere for teachers to sort of move up. We also hear from our beginning teachers, especially our residency licensed teachers, which we have more and more of in our schools, that they don't have the day-to-day support that they really need to get better and to improve their instruction and to become those effective teachers. And that's because they kind of work in isolation in their own classroom, and we don't have a structure outside of the mentor structure that really gives them the professional support and coaching that they need. And then the last thing is really important when we think about how this structure impacts students. Students are assigned, especially in the early grades, one teacher. They're in their one classroom, and they're in that one teacher's classroom for the entire year. And so we know that the quality of that teacher impacts how well those students are going to do, how much they're going to learn. And when we sometimes we have to put inexperienced teachers or novice developing teachers in with those students. And those students in that classroom don't get the access to the effective instruction that they really need and deserve. And that's a result of the organizational structure, the way we structure our school building. So this is just another illustration of that. When you look at just like a very basic sort of illustration of a first grade, we see that, we have this dark blue, one really highly effective teacher, 16 students get access to her instruction, but the other students in that grade, some of them have an effective teacher. One classroom is a beginning teacher, so I'm not sure how well he's gonna do yet. These kids are not all getting access like they deserve to that really great teacher. So advanced teaching roles can change that. So this is a really basic illustration of an advanced teaching role structure where you actually have a level of coaching and lead teachers, sort of this middle level of teachers who are actually our very best teachers, and they're pulled. They're coaching their smaller teams. So unlike an instructional coach that coaches across the entire building, they have a really targeted group of teachers that they're working with, 6 to 8, and they're so sort of connected with those teachers and with the students on their team that they're pushing in, delivering instruction, they're pulling small groups, they're really intimately involved and embedded in the day-to-day work of that team of teachers. They're also held accountable for the performance of those students. And so it's a different structure in our building, and it allows those teachers to be on that team to get better faster. It allows the lead teacher to have advancement opportunities that person is sort of desiring. And it gives our students more access to great instruction. So sort of this is a summary of what I just said. We've got advancement opportunities, we've got embedded professional support, distributing leadership across the building. Principals in these models report that they actually have a better pulse on what's happening in their building because they have those lead teachers that they trust that are really knowledgeable about what's happening in the classroom. And then these models increase students' access to effective educators. In these models, students are growing. Student growth is higher than in similar schools that are not doing this. And I'll let you hear from people on the ground who are doing that can speak to that. But there's been some really great success with this program so far. So this is another sort of illustration of the fact that when you pull that highly effective teacher up to this lead teacher position, she's still pushing into these classrooms and coaching these teachers, but she is now touching all of the students on the grade level. So all the students have access to a highly effective teacher, as opposed to just the 16 in the first illustration. So Best NC has been advocating for advanced teaching roles since 2015 after seeing how well it was going in Charlotte. And as part of our work on this, we have sort of surveyed districts to figure out, what are you doing? What is it that's making this work for you? And so the two most common types of positions that we are seeing right now are this lead teacher position, which I've talked about a lot, which serves as sort of a coach of a small group of teachers and is responsible for the performance of the students on that team. And then we also see an extended reach teacher, which is a teacher that is maybe really great with students, but not yet ready to lead adults. And so this extended reach teacher will just take on an additional number of students, potentially an extra section or slightly larger classes, and actually get paid for that extra sort of caseload. So looking at our state, we now have 19 districts implementing advanced teaching roles, and you can see that with the grant program, every time there's a grant opportunity, we sort of add additional districts. So the program was originally a pilot. It's now a permanent program. So this annual opportunity to opt into this. We believe it's really important for your district to be ready for this kind of systemic change and transition. You have to have principals and leaders who are willing to do this. And then as part of the grant, you take time the first year of your grant to really plan and design what you're going to do with your leaders and with your teachers in your district so that it's a really organic transition. It's a challenging transition, but it's something that folks in your district are really bought in and want to pursue. We now have, this is sort of shows you the growth of this initiative over time. We now have more than 900 teachers across the state working in these roles, earning up to $20,000 more than their regular salaries for taking on lead teacher positions. Over 200 schools are participating. And so these advanced roles teachers, we estimate, are reaching about 60,000 students across the state. So this is a growing initiative. We're still in the early stages, but it is really taking root across the state. So Best NC has written a brief about advanced teaching roles. This has been a huge part of our work for the last several years, and we're not selling a product here. We just we believe it's a really great idea. We believe it's good for students and educators, and would want to share about this with you all. So we have this brief. You can find it here. We also have several videos that provide practitioner perspectives on how this work is going, how it's working for them, why it's been impactful. And so you can watch all of that on our landing page, and I'll share this out following this whole PowerPoint following this call. But I want you to know that this brief is there. It has best practices for districts based on our understanding of what's happened so far. So we hope that you'll use it as a resource as you consider this work. So we're all here to discuss and learn about the RFP opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, it's an annual opportunity to opt into this program. The window for the RFP will be available September 15th, and then proposals are due October 15th. The grant term is 3 years, and you are now eligible to do 2 3-year terms. So the first 3 years you would apply, and then you can actually apply for a second 3-year term. The grant funds must be used for transition costs. So this would be your cost to design your advanced teaching roles model, to train your folks to understand how this works, to train your lead teachers, your principals, et cetera. And then the actual salary increases are created within budget. So you have to lots of schools use Title I funds and use some trading to figure out how to sustain the salary supplements for your lead teachers. The grant funds are there to help you design and figure all of that out and how you're going to make it work. And the districts do receive class size flexibility for advanced teaching role schools during the grant term. So while you are a grantee, you get class size flexibility for your schools. And at the elementary school level, that helps you kind of figure out how you're going to adjust people's schedules to make this all work. So Kim, I'm going to turn it over to Kim now, but this link here is the RFP page for advanced teaching roles on DPI's site, and it provides has links to the previous RFPs as well as proposals that were successful from other districts. So it's a resource for you if you're considering pursuing this. All right, so Kim, Dr. Kim Evans with DPI is here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Kim, to talk more about the RFP opportunity.
Thank you, Leah. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to jump right into the RFP opportunity that Leah just spoke about. The pilot started in 2020, and it let you know that the proposal, the RFP opportunity, would be released every September 15th of that year. So this will go to the board in September for approval, so that then we can share this with districts as on September 15th, 2022. And as Leah was talking about, the purpose of the program is really focused around student growth, student outcomes, by allowing highly effective classroom teachers to be able to increase the number of students that they're able to touch and really affect. And then also, I think also in the end, it really helps to shape the teacher workforce that they're working with as well. So it goes beyond just being able to have improving that student outcome piece, but also creating stronger classroom teachers within the school as well in a collaborative way, but also strengthening their instructional practices, and also providing those highly effective classroom teachers an opportunity to be leaders in their school, and have a salary supplement to go with it. And so that motivates them to then want to be part of this program and to do the best that they can do for all the students in their grade level in the school. So they see the students as our students, not my students. So these are the key dates for the RFP. As Leah was talking about, September 15th is when we would release the RFP to districts. And then the deadline for having the proposal submitted to DPI or from local boards of education is October 15th of 2022. And then the state board would select the units, the local school administrative units for the program by December 15th, 2022. And so this particular cohort would be cohort number 3, program cohort number 3. And you can see that your funding, which we don't know the exact dollar amount, we are figuring that out right now. You would have planning funds for 2023 and then implementation funds starting 2024. So you can see how it bleeds over into 2025, 2026. And so I'm going to just go over pieces of the rubric on the excellent level so that you know what the strongest level could be for the rubric evaluation. And this is what is used to select RFP recipients. So the first piece is plan design. And as you go through this, I'm not going to read this to you, but I really want you to think about for each piece, if you were, and I know that you'll take the link that Leah has provided in her part of the presentation to go back and look at example RFP proposals. But as you're going through each piece for the excellent plan or the excellent portion of the rubric for each piece, think about how would you design this? What would you do? Who's doing this? Kind of ask yourself some questions around your plan design. What are you going to be able to establish for your clear process? How you're going to articulate your preliminary work? And how are you going to identify your timeline? Think about answering your specific questions as you put together your RFP proposal. And then there's also qualifications for positions. There's 5 qualifications to serve in advanced teaching roles, one of which has to be approved, making sure that you utilize the weighting system and including your own theory of action to support that system, and then making sure that your measures are more than just quantitative or qualitative, that you're able to utilize both.
And I'll just add, Kim, here that this is a really important part of figuring out, what makes sense for your district, what measures of, qualifications do you want to set for your district. And this is a really important place where you want teacher buy-in, and you want teachers to perceive that what you're choosing as a district to make someone eligible for advanced roles position is fair and objective. So having a mix of measures is really important. The legislation is fairly flexible, that you have to choose one thing that's listed in the legislation, and then everything else can kind of be things that you look at on your own. And districts have made this really rigorous, but it's important to kind of structure it so that the teachers that you're working with perceive that the things that you're looking at are fair, so that there's fairness in selection, and that they don't feel like there's any sort of favoritism in who gets these roles.
Right. Thank you, Leah. I think also I want to add that for each of these pieces, and I know sustainability is an important piece that you'll see later, but all of these pieces will help you with sustainability, which is something that we really look at, or those that are reviewing the proposals, because there's a team of folks that are chosen to review proposals outside of my own team, that they do a blind review. And so they really look at how sustainable your program will be if it is implemented and planned for. And then there's job responsibilities. And I know Leah has talked about the lead teacher and the reach position as well. Thinking about what the responsibilities would be for particular positions that you would have within your model, and then thinking about how you would weight those particular responsibilities according to what positions they are. So, and of course, going back to the multiple measures that Leah and I had talked about.
Yeah, and the two positions that I mentioned earlier are the two most common positions that we see. Those are not the only positions that you have to design or use. So just to, as it currently stands, there are districts who are doing different types of positions, and so you are not bound to those two. Those are just the two that we've seen the most, and that we have some studies, especially on the lead teacher, about the impact of those positions. So.
And then thinking about how you would communicate this new model to the public, to your stakeholders, making sure that this helps with buy-in as well, because that also helps with sustainability. So making sure that you have a plan of action around your communication strategy. So this is something that probably needs to be ongoing throughout the conception of your model, throughout the implementation of it, and then how it could change or grow as your school district changes and grows as well. And then, of course, we all think about budget and how we're going to utilize our dollars. So these are four bullets about putting together your budget plan and thinking about that as well. And then the sustainability piece. It seems to be one of the most important pieces that I've noticed, even within legislation, that they really want to see that the models are able to be sustained and something that can be shared across the state. So really think about how you would sustain your model. And that's why Leah talked about that funding is not available for funding the actual stipends themselves, but it's for helping you with the design and then the implementation pieces. So then that can help you with being able to be sustainable. And then outcomes and evaluation, thinking about how you're going to, what outcomes you end up with, how you're going to evaluate those, and what changes you're going to make to your model and your plan. And this can go back to all the different pieces that you're talking about within the rubric, but how you would evaluate it to then make it better or improve some things that aren't quite working. How would you do this? And then there was a piece on equity and diversity to meet, to talk. So the state board has, one of their goals focuses on equity and diversity within education. And so we wanted to make sure that that was also present within advanced teaching roles. And so they made that a part of this rubric last September 2021, I believe. And so it says that they will add it, but they did add it September 2021. And we can move on to the next slide. It'll show. So these are the additions to the RFP, and you'll notice these throughout the rubric itself. They are not underlined. This is what was presented to the state board, but you can see how it's making sure that it's across all students, that you make sure that you're focusing on teachers, especially early career teachers, that it's just making sure that it's including students and teachers as a whole, not leaving particular, not neglecting anyone as a model across your district, across schools.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Anything else to add?
I don't think so. If there's any questions, please reach out. Also, Tom Tomberlin is a part of this work as well. He is on vacation right now. So I'm happy to fill in, and please reach out whenever you have a question.
Great. And we have some time for questions now. So The bulk of the rest of the call is really for you all to ask questions of the folks who are joining us. So just to reintroduce, we of course have Kim from the department. We have Dr. Heath Belcher from Lincoln County and Kelly McKinnon from CMS. And these are folks who are not really knowledgeable about this work. So we hope that you'll ask questions of them. And you can use the chat function to ask questions, and I will voice them if that's what you prefer, or you're welcome to come off mute and ask the question yourself. So first I want to just welcome Heath and Kelly. And let's see. So I'm going to ask a couple of opening questions, and then we'll just dive into to your questions. So Kelly, I want to start with you, if that's okay. CMS has been implementing advanced teaching roles for almost a decade now. And so talk a little bit about the impact of this work, how many schools you're in, and why you all stuck with this for such a long time.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So going into the 22-23 school year, we will have 87 schools participating out of our 176. And we just finished our application window into our teacher leader talent pool. And so now we have we're at almost 700 qualified teachers in our talent pool. So that's combined teachers in a role and not in a role, but eligible to be a teacher leader. So we are still growing and still expanding. So that of course is bringing some challenges, but it is very clear, especially to principals and teachers now, that this is a program that our whole district is behind, and that our schools are seeing how it positively affects their student outcomes, their school building culture, and teachers are seeing it as a way, like you mentioned at the very beginning, a way to expand their leadership, but not really have to go into administration. It's kind of that sweet spot there that we find a lot of teachers really enjoy. And I really think that's it. It's effective. It's effective for principals. One of the things we found when we had that really quick and fast and continuous pivot season of, the early part of the pandemic, our multi-classroom leaders and our teacher leaders, our expanded impact teachers, were really the ones in our schools who were utilizing the model, who are helping make those transitions effective. And we can kind of see results on the back end where quite a few of our schools did not see some of the drops in student achievement that maybe some of our other schools saw. So that was really encouraging to see once some of the data had come back at the end of the school year. So that was really good.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So yeah, it's been exciting to see CMS grow this model and also commit to it, for a long term. It's been really great. And CMS is obviously a super large district. So many of you are probably saying, CMS is totally different than us. But there are lots of small rural districts doing this. And CMS is a situation where it takes more than a decade to phase this into all of the schools, going incrementally, adding a few schools at a time. And then there are other smaller districts that can actually get it district-wide in 2 or 3 years. So it is important to choose a small group of schools that you want to start with, folks that are willing, and then kind of phase it in over time. And that takes, different amount of years for based on the size of your district. So Heath, I'm going to turn to you now. Lincoln County was awarded a grant earlier this year, for the first of this year. And so you've been planning, and you're about to sort of start implementing. So just talk to us a little bit about what drew you to advanced teaching roles, and what you're planning for the upcoming school year.
Absolutely. Thanks, Leah. So to Kelly's point, a lot of the things that she mentioned was exactly what initially attracted our district to seeking out some of these opportunities. I will say I became, prior to being assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, I was in HR. So I became familiar with advanced roles in my work as the chief human resource officer for the school district. And so there were really two critical things during my time there that I saw that we needed to address. And one was hard to staff schools. We had some schools that were more difficult demographically. They had a lot of a more diverse population, high turnover rates in these particular schools, and their performance also was lower in these schools. And when you start to look at, they typically were schools that had newer teachers, early career teachers, teachers that oftentimes transitioned a lot between different districts and schools. And so that was one of the initial challenges that I kind of said, okay, we need to figure out a way to help some of these schools. And then the second part was with the class size, and knowing that some of that legislation, it has some strengths, obviously, when you're looking at class size, but when you're trying to, as we're all familiar with, they don't come in neat packages of 16 and 18 and 21. So we struggled with, okay, we went over just by one student or two students, and how can we better serve our students and still meet the legislative requirements? And so we tried to get creative, and there was just that class size seemed to continuously be a wall or a barrier for us in how we could be creative to meet our student needs. And so the ATR grant providing opportunities for class size flexibility was really one of the initial things that attracted me to seeking that opportunity, which now, I mean, we're fortuitous of it, because now as we're all dealing with teacher shortages and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to cover classrooms that don't have teachers and can't find positions? We're fortunate now because we have some class size flexibility that allows us to look at some creative ways to address some of the teacher shortage challenges that are going on all across the state. So certainly has been a benefit for us. So those were the two initial things. I will say that we have 6 schools that are part of our ATR schools. These are what we in Lincoln County would consider the town schools, meaning that they feed Lincolnton High School. So it's all these schools fall within the Lincolnton Township. And so we have 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. They all feed into the same middle school and the same high school. So we're building some continuity with some of the services that we're able to provide. Our goal, one of our goals is that our lead teachers at our high school will also be able to work with lead teachers at the middle school and the elementary school, so that there can be some continuity of what we're looking at across all 3 of those different levels. And so we have 21 schools across the district, so that gives you an idea about how our initial rollout looks. 6 out of 21, and obviously, as we evaluate and move forward, our goal, and hopefully we'll be able to replicate and expand. So that's kind of a very quick, short version. But to Kelly's point, all the things that she said also are reasons why we pursued this. I'm looking at teacher effectiveness, having high quality instruction across our schools. One of the recent kind of attractions, or I guess more a central focus for us, to Kelly's point about developing a teacher talent pool. What we're finding is we've struggled to develop that talent pool, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to share more details about that later, but certainly that was part of the reason why as well. We wanted to expand our teachers' capacity, and part of that is developing a talent pool.
Great, thanks, Heath. So we have one question about this option. Is this option available for individual lab schools? Kim, do you know the answer to that question?
I don't. I just know that districts have always been chosen in the past, not individual schools.
Right.
But I don't know that to be sure.
Okay. So
but that's something we can get back with the group about.
Yeah, Jen, we'll look into that and see. I believe it's only been districts who have applied thus far. So we'll let you know about that possibility and get back to you. Other questions from the group, other things you would like to ask these folks? So thank you, McLean. What has been the impact of the program on beginning teachers, and has it impacted teacher retention for beginning or, more career veteran teachers?
I'll say, because we're just starting, so I don't know but one of our specific roles, and Leah shared with you kind of the two major roles that you'll see. We have lead teachers in our district. Our grant was written, and lead teachers continue to serve students and then also provide professional development and work with adults as well. So that's kind of they still continue to serve a larger class size or expand their reach by serving students. Then we have peer assistance mentors. Our peer assistance mentors is the other role that was designed directly to work with early career teachers. When Kim was showing you some of those legislative requirements with equity, and you saw where it was targeted for early career teachers, the peer assistance mentors is designed in our district for that specific purpose. And so hopefully that will certainly work to our advantage in helping not only keep those teachers, but also develop them.
Kelly, you want to talk to that? Yes.
Yeah, sure. So for our schools, one of the things that we found early on, probably, and we had a study about this the last time we looked at it was about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. We found that teachers who were paired with a multi-classroom leader, so a teacher leader who was working with a team of teachers, either on a grade level or specific content area, they saw their evaluation ratings increase. So from proficient to accomplished or accomplished to distinguished. And we particularly look at standard 4. So that content piece. And then also kind of a byproduct of that, working with a teacher leader, you kind of also see that increase on standard 1, that leadership. So those two areas increase just kind of with working on teams. And that also goes for our beginning teachers. So we have several schools who utilize some of their teacher leader positions as part of their support specifically for beginning teachers. I can think of one elementary school in particular where they generally have a large either group of student teachers, residency teachers, and or teachers in that first 1 to 3 years of teaching. And because our district is so large, not every school gets a beginning teacher coach. So one of our principals uses one of her multi-classroom leader positions as kind of an in-house beginning teacher support person. So they co-teach with their beginning teachers. They kind of work in tandem with the with our district-wide beginning teacher support program and kind of coordinating all of that for their building. But they're specific to making sure it works in this teacher leader pathway model. And so I know some principals use their multi-classroom leaders that way. And then we've also seen, as far as retention goes, and that's been a big buzzword, where because our teacher leaders have to have been teaching for at least 2 years, we do have some teachers who maybe got in their second or third year. And we know that within our program, our retention rate is about 2 or 3 points higher than the district average retention rate. So we know if those teachers make it into the talent pool, they tend to stay around a little longer than teachers who do not.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, awesome. Let's see. So this would be a question for Kim from Winston-Salem. So Tina, yes, you are eligible for another 3-year term. So 2 3-year cycles is what you're eligible for now. And the question is the process any different for districts that already had 1 cycle? So the grant process different?
For applying for the RFP, is that what?
For
is that what
applying for a second, term.
As far as I know, it is not different, but I can confirm that as well.
Yeah, Tina, I think last year was the first year that there were any renewals. So this is a relatively new add to the legislation that you're eligible for the second term. And last year, it was a fixed amount. That the second cycle was more like a fixed amount. So than sort of the first cycle where you kind of determine your own budget and everything. So we can follow up, and there'll be more details on that, I think, once the RFP is available, but we can follow up with you on that too. All right, so another question is, how do districts determine which schools would be a part, like which schools to start with advanced teaching roles? What criteria are you looking at to decide that a school is ready?
Well, I know for CMS, we initially started with a specific subset of schools in the early pilot years that was working through public partnership. And so those specific schools traditionally had lower student achievement scores, higher teacher turnover, what you would call our struggling schools, I guess. And so we really kind of started there. Then we expanded it specifically to our Title I schools because they're usually the ones that have the extra funding. As if you were paying attention earlier, this the grant doesn't cover funding the positions, and so schools have to find that money within their school budgets. And so we started there, but now we have expanded. We have non-Title I schools that participate as well. And what we do each year in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools is look through the list of schools remaining that are maybe not quite meeting their performance goals, or where we know we've seen several principal transitions in the past couple of years. So if there's kind of been a lot of churn in a particular school, we will recommend schools to the learning community superintendent and say, hey, we've noticed this pattern in the school, and we'll recommend them. Then the learning community superintendent will kind of converse with us and the principal to see if this is something they're interested in. Of course, also at this point, we have schools, because our district is so large, we have principals who are maybe moved to schools that haven't had the program, and they will bring it to their new school a lot of times. So with a district our size, now a lot of it is principals bringing the program to wherever they're placed next and expanding it that way. We've also had a lot of schools this year express interest because of that class size waiver. And they're finding, oh, that class size waiver may be the thing we need to kind of fill some gaps that we couldn't otherwise fill.
Hey,
Yeah.
Leah, can I jump in here?
Hey, Chris.
Sure.
Hey, good morning, Heath. So I was actually with CMS when we launched
Hey, Chris.
Opportunity Culture. I was actually part of Project Lift. I just kind of want to interject just from the trial and error side when we first rolled everything out. A couple things we looked at was just an opportunity for principals to opt in. This is a big culture shift in your buildings. So it's important to remember that. We also looked at principals that had a very strong lens and aptitude for strategic leadership. So when we brought in these positions, it was about navigating the instructional schedules. It was about how to balance coaching caseloads. It was about like all of the technical sides. And it was really important that we had strong leaders in those buildings that could navigate that process and help us kind of shepherd it in. So those were two key components. I know there was more, but it's just not top of mind since it was so long ago, but I wanted to add that because it has been a journey, I know, for CMS, and they've really done some great stuff with it.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, Chris is right. So what we're learning too within Lincoln County, because our 6 schools, we obviously had a strategic reason for targeting those schools based on demographics and different things. And fortunately for us, generally speaking, most of the leaders there are pretty strategic and prepared for it to do the work. But there are some challenges that we're already having to work through and navigate through with culture and shifting coaching responsibilities and what that looks like. So a lot of our work initially up front in our initial launch is all culture work, trying to build the culture to where, you don't have a jealousy among staff members and and are able to have those difficult coaching kinds of conversations in a positive way where the principal doesn't misuse the roles and the responsibilities that come with these advanced roles and as another administrator or another evaluator. And so all of those things, to Chris's point, are really important. And probably for us, as we expand and look at replicating in other schools, to Kelly's point, Title I schools, would be a priority. Schools that are underperforming, and we say underperforming, it may be even schools that are proficient, but they may not be reaching their full potential within their proficiency. And so this may be a missing element with that. But we also want to make sure we have leaders that are prepared for the work, and then that we're committed as a district to keep that principle in place for at least for the next several years, because we don't want to do that work and then shift them or move them or reassign them. So there's lots of considerations as we think about, expanding and replicating in other schools.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of things that, so the one, like the retention of the leader in the building being really important. And the culture conversation makes me think a little bit about training. Like, what professional development are you providing your either your lead teachers or school building administrators so that you can help them transition to this new structure?
Yeah, so in Lincoln, what we have, one of the initial things we launched with, and some of you may be familiar with it, I think we actually got it from Pitt County. And they were one of the first districts to roll out ATR, but True Colors, it's a personality temperament test or assessment that we've used, and that's helped enlighten some of our lead teachers, our administrators on, within grade levels or departments or individuals, why there's sometimes conflict. And so that was one of the initial parts, just making sure that we understand where different people's perspectives and values come from, and are working through some norms. We've used Ed Direction, and some of you may formally drive. If you've used Charlie Lyons and some of that group, we've used them a lot to help us build some of the culture capacity in our schools and to look at some brain research and some of those critical elements that are important before we even start to kind of lay out what those roles and responsibilities are. Just really using some experts and some data, gathering some data on how to build a culture.
Kelly, what have you all done on training?
So we have a onboarding process for our new schools and their principals. So we ask them to put together a design team. So school administrators, teachers who are influential in their building, possibly parents if they want to get parents on board as part of that. We also, as part of their design team, they have to go back and present this plan to their school leadership team before they, finalize any of their decisions and roles and things like that. So this onboarding process for the schools takes place over, we've got it down to 3 sessions now, but we really have them take a look at their needs assessment, and we really want to make sure they have teachers on board because it's really going to affect the culture in their building. So we make sure they do the needs assessment. They look at scheduling, but the most important piece, one of the most important pieces that I think is the communication plan. So how are we rolling this out? Who do we need to speak to? And at what point do we need to share this information? And how are we sharing this information? Are we addressing all of the questions? Because that's one of the questions we get a lot. Well, if you do this, don't teachers get upset that not everybody can be a teacher leader? Doesn't it cause, competition or jealousy? If you roll it out correctly, if you keep in mind your school goals, the reason why everybody's in the building in the first place, then it actually is a boost to culture and morale in your building because teachers know they have support. They know that they don't have to find a busy administrator every time they need something. There's someone who comes around regularly and checks on them, and that they're part of a collaborative team. And that really actually does support what teachers are really wanting. And so that design session is key. And then we also have sessions for our teacher leaders once they are eligible, once they get into the talent pool. So even if they're not serving in a teacher role automatically. So maybe their school hasn't rolled it out yet, or maybe their school doesn't have enough money to fund all the positions they want for this year. They're still eligible to take our courses. We offer the Vital Smarts series of courses. I think they're called Crucial Learning now. So Crucial Conversations, Getting Things Done, which is actually a teacher leader favorite. So, scheduling your time and time management and things like that, that's a favorite of them. And then we have some sessions specifically for multi-classroom leaders and expanded impact teachers, just kind of level like meetings where we talk about things specific to each role at the beginning of the year and a couple of times throughout the year.
Awesome. Thanks. So one thing, and just thinking about the lead teacher position, that there are positions that some districts structure their lead teacher positions where they're, you can have a mix as well, but they're full release lead teachers who spend all of their time supporting other teachers and coaching. And then there are folks who are partial release. And this really depends on the decision is made at the school level, I think mostly based on budget and staff capacity, but partial release teachers would spend part of their time still being the teacher of record for a class of students for a certain period of time, and then spend the other part of their time coaching. So just to let you guys know, there's also some flexibility within the roles. How much do people take on and how much coaching they actually do? One thing I want to hit on before we getting close to time is some districts are hiring outside support to help them plan and design their models. And I want to talk, I know CMS has had some outside support. Heath, I'm not sure if you have some at Lincoln. So just talk a little bit about your approach to that and how it's helped or why you've made the decisions you've made.
So I mentioned in reference to Ed Direction, they've been helpful with us with the initial launch, really thinking through that. We're also using through the Rethink Education Partnership and RTI, some of their work with data literacy and some different things for some coaching support as well. So those are really kind of the two essential initial outside support that we've received. And obviously we still are evaluating options and looking for other opportunities for developing some of that PD as we begin to roll it out. But that's the great thing about, I think, in some ways about the funding and the grant. We would have never been able to, in our district, had the funding sources or the availability to use some of those outside experts, so to speak, that can help us with this work. And so the grant has been very valuable in that regard.
Kelly, I know you've worked with a lot of folks, public impact being one.
Yeah, so I was just trying to think if I could remember where. So Public Impact one, Belk Foundation. We have also, between our department and beginning teacher support, we use Better Lesson. We've had several independent outside consultants. And there was one that just escaped me that I was getting ready to list. And currently, as part of our talent pool process, we partner with Bloomboard. So running a micro-credential process for teachers to qualify for our talent pool, just because our district staff is so small, and it also helps keep things, objective and that kind of thing. So we partner with Bloomboard, which has also allowed us to create kind of a whole pathway. So there's a set of micro-credentials that the mentors use for beginning teacher support, and a set of micro-credentials that our teacher leaders use as they're qualifying. And so the goal is in the next year or so to align those and see if we can't get a continuous flow so that we can open our pool up even broader than beyond our core content area teachers. We've done a little bit of that. We've tried that for the past couple of years on a smaller scale, but this really might give us the chance we need to go kind of outside of that and create a larger pathway. So that's the most recent is Bloomboard that we're working with right now.
Great. so that grant funds can really help supplement your capacity at the district to design these things and do the PD and all of that. Are there any additional, getting close to our time, are there any additional questions from folks on the call that you would like to ask Kelly, Heath, or Kim? Okay, so we will wrap up. I thank everybody so much for joining us. And I want to just say to Kelly and Heath, final words, if you could give a district some advice as they think about this opportunity, what would be your advice to them?
My advice would be read some other districts' grants proposals. For us, we read a lot. There was a lot of opportunity and culture and public impact in some of those grants, which gave us a good foundation. And then we read through some, and really anything if you read our grant, everything in there honestly is probably borrowed or stolen from somebody else's grant. We maybe tailored some of the data and information to Lincoln County, but everything else, another district already had that idea. We just stole it or replicated it to make it our own. Shout out, I think probably Birdie and Wilson were two grants that we looked at and leveraged a lot. We looked at Pitts for a lot of our teacher leadership pathway work and developing the talent pool because they had a lot of resources and stuff in that area. So read the grants and then make it fit your district and read the legislative requirements, look at the rubric that Kim shared and just follow that rubric. And you might be surprised how quickly you come up with a strong grant proposal and how many pages are in that grant proposal that was really daunting at first. But once you look at some of those other examples for everything from format, I mean, I think we borrowed one of the district's format and everything. So Leah, I think they're all available maybe on your website to click and look and read through as well. So read those grants and get your ideas from there.
Yeah, and I would say this is kind of the same advice we give our principals in their design sessions. As you're going through everybody, take all of the ideas. You never really know where it's going to end up with. Put them all down in pencil, with the understanding that it will probably shift once you get to the implementation part a little bit, but start as big as you can possibly think, because the impact and the ability to make some really positive changes I mean, there's countless ways this could go that could help your school and your district. So
yeah, Kelly's right. And I'll say this, and probably the hardest part, or one of the most critical things, that when we took all of those ideas, getting to that theory of action, I think in the rubric, we kept seeing that word, theory of action, theory of action. And so once you get that developed and just continue to build everything around that theory of action, it works out nicely.
Great. Well, thank y'all so much for your time. Thanks to folks on the call for your time. Here are the dates again. Look for an email. Look for this opportunity on September 15th. I will send it out once it's available. So it'll come from me, but of course it's officially coming from DPI and Dr. Tomberlin's team over there. And then quick month to submit, due October 15th. Best NC also convenes districts who are interested in implementing advanced teaching roles in what we call them sharing sessions, but it's really our attempt to create a sort of a community of practice around this work so people can share ideas and learn from one another. So Heath, you just mentioned Lincoln County or Wilson County. So we actually are going to be in Wilson in October. We do not have the date set yet, but we will share that invitation with you so that you can join us in person. And the school visit is a really great way to hear from the teachers and to really see how it's working and the mechanics of it as well as the impact. So we hope you'll join us in Wilson. And I will send this deck as well as other follow-up materials to you by email later this week, but we appreciate your time and hope you have a good rest of your day.